Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on the next of our series of webinars that the managing directors at Brandon Hall Group have been putting on. This one today, we're going to be talking about reimagining compliance training. This is something that I've been looking into for a really long time. Done a bunch of research in it over the years, written a few things on it, and it's kind of a perennial issue that comes up. So I thought it was time to revisit and talk through. And so I'm going to talk through some of what we've seen here at Brandon Hall Group about what this means, as well as share some examples of companies that have won awards specifically for this, for their compliance training and their somewhat novel approaches to it and the results. So I know that's probably the most interesting part. So I'm going to go ahead and get to that. But as we go, I just want everyone to know that I'm open to questions and chat and whatever you have there. So please feel free to use that as we go. We'll have a little bit more on how to in a sec. For those of you who don't know, David Wentworth, I am the managing director for learning and talent here at Brandon Hall Group. I started with Brandon Hall Group back in 2012 and have been an industry analyst for longer than that. So if I don't know you yet, happy to see you. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn and what have you, and hope to stay connected in the future. For those who aren't familiar with Brandon Hall Group, we'll just tell you a little bit about who we are. We're a professional development firm. Everything we do is based in our research and our advisory and analyst work. But we've been serving learning and talent HR executives for more than 30 years. We advance the growth and performance of millions of employees and leaders with our cloud-based platform, delivering evidence-based research, data, and certification programs. Our impact spans more than 10 million employees and executives globally, supported by our research library, our strategic insights, and of course, our prestigious awards program, which I'm imagining most, if not all of you, are familiar with. But below on that scroll, you'll see some of the companies that partner with us. We're proud to have them as our partners. We have a lot of things in the works for this year and into the next. We've got our learning and networking opportunities around our events. So our BRIC events are our AI Summit on October 15th and our Leadership Summit on November 17th and 18th. You can see on the right all of the different dates for the different awards programs as far as submitting and when those close. And then on the right, you see a little description of our Eminence program for organizations where we give you a deeper dive into our research, our insights, access to our analysts for insights, access to the network, and some guidance on HCM issues that you might be facing. So we're very, very proud of that Eminence program as well, but not as proud as we are of our Excellence Conference. Fantastic event every year. If you have been, you know. If you haven't, I recommend it. Just an incredible learning experience from all the sessions, networking experience from the quality and level of people that attend, and just a lot of fun because the award ceremony itself is not like anything else you're going to get in this industry, I wouldn't think. So January 26th through 28th. And of course, all this information that I just discussed will come out in a PDF to you guys all after this within the next day or so. So based on that, the things that I just walked through, before we get really into everything, just want to give people an opportunity. If there's anything that I talked about, touched on, that you saw, that you're interested in, please go ahead and check your selection, and we'll send out specific information of those things to you. You can pick one, you can pick all of them, whatever you like. But we want to make sure we're getting the right info to the right people. So feel free to fill that out in the next couple of seconds here if you want some more information. And then once we're good with that, and I'll give you a minute to run that one, but I'm going to ask you another question right after that too. And this one is more for our research, right? That helps us with all of our research assets and the way we approach the work that we do each year. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next poll. And what you'll see here is if you're familiar with our progression models, this is one of the bases of our progression model. We ask this question continually throughout the year just to see where people are, see how things are shifting, how they're changing. But if you look at your own organization, your L&D programs, your L&D function, your strategy overall, which one of these would you say best describes where you are? And this is not, a best of or anything like that. This is literally progression. It's just to get a sense of where folks are in their journey with L&D. Could be, some more early days, phase one, or maybe you've, sort of figured everything out and you're at that phase four optimized level, but it's all about the progression. So just trying to get a sense, and that helps us guide our research over the years as we move ahead. All right. And I think that's enough time for that. And then the next thing I just want to do is let you know, as I mentioned at the top, questions, chat, going to be wide open. Love to hear from you. Got the chat open now. Everyone's saying where they're calling from or dialing in. That's great. I heard I see someone's maybe got an echo. I'm assuming that might be on your end because I haven't seen that from anywhere else. So please, I hope you get that sorted out. I'd hate for you to be distracted by my voice twice. But yeah, feel free to ask questions in that chat. Talk to each other. If someone's got some insights they want to share, knock yourself out. That sounds great to me. We really enjoy that. So if you do that. Okay, so let's just dive in. And there's a lot of stuff. I might go through some of it kind of quick. Like I said, you'll get access to this in a PDF afterwards, so you can go back and review. But there's just so much I want to cover, and we don't have a ton of time today. So, from a compliance training standpoint, it's interesting how little a lot of this has changed over the years, but the current state is still pretty similar to what the current state has been for a long time. On the one hand, compliance training is, basically a universal given. Everyone's familiar with it. Most organizations, if not all, have some level of compliance training they have to do, whether it's answering to some governing body or if it's just their own internal, hey, this is how we do things, read the employee handbook and check it out. Some form of compliance training. And it touches every employee, right? So as far as learning programs go, you don't get a broader expanse of an audience than compliance training. And it covers, like I said, everything from that handbook. It could be life and death critical information, just depending on the organization, the industry, and the nature of what you do. And regardless of that, the stakes are high. Even if it isn't a life and death situation, compliance issues can cost businesses millions of dollars. It can cost them the actual ability to perform their business if things aren't in compliance. So it's really critical that we do this. And yet, despite all of that, we really, really seem to struggle to make compliance training engaging, effective. You see what happens to people when you mention it. Even, learning professionals themselves, you mention compliance training, and they go, oh, yep. And there's this sort of love-hate relationship with it from the organization, and it's seen as sort of a necessary evil, I think is a phrase I've heard a lot over the years. So while the rest of L&D, all the other stuff that we do, has become much more learner-centric and much more strategic and impactful, we really haven't taken that approach to compliance training. It's really kind of remained as is, check the box, get it done, or else kind of approach. But it is possible to change that, right? To stay relevant, to stay impactful, to become impactful. We have to start thinking about compliance training the way we think about the other ways we deliver learning, right? Just because it's the nature of the material is compliance related, regulatorily related, doesn't mean that people learn differently than they would in another situation. So we should be adopting those things. So that means different modes of learning, interactive formats, using more reliance on neuroscience, cognitive science, the way that people think about things, the way that people remember things, how they apply things, to make sure that this stuff works, is impactful, and that people are doing what we need them to do. So for that, companies have to rethink their approach. For years, we've talking about how compliance needs to move, or learning needs to move away from completion, focused learning. Like that's the only measurement. Did everyone finish it? We've done a good job of moving to more impactful measurement of learning, but compliance hasn't had that. Compliance, by its definition, for most organizations, they feel as though as long as we get people to finish it and the right percentage of people to finish it, it's done and it's good. So we need to shift that mindset. It can't be about finishing. It has to be about improving performance. And all of these things, strategy, content, technology, the way we measure, all should be focused on business needs, even in compliance. Because the truth is, even the most sort of mundane seeming compliance content issue, whatever it is that you're training about, there is some business need there. There's a business reason behind it. And it isn't take this training or else, right? Take this training or you're in trouble. That can't be the way we do it. And so that just means we take that sort of integrated performance-based approach that we're doing for other things and try to apply that in a compliance environment. And look, I know that we'll never be able to do that, even in a perfect world, for all of compliance, because in some cases, that compliance training is out of your hands as an organization, right? It's some third-party regulatory body, a government agency that has decided this is the regulation, this is the compliance need, and we have created the training for that and delivered out. Not a lot you can do about that. But for all of the other stuff, there's no reason why we can't take slightly different approaches with that. So to that end, I wanted to share a handful of examples that I've found in our award winners library around what some companies are doing. Um, First one that I wanted to point out is Byte Dance. And if you're not familiar right off the top with the name of that company, you might be more familiar with TikTok, which is their product. And so they, for their compliance training, they went ahead and built a gamified compliance training called Privacy Flicks to deliver the necessary compliance training to their audiences. So they built it, Privacy Flicks. It's about privacy, and it's based on a Netflix style approach. So that's hence the name, Privacy Flicks. And they rolled it out in seasons, right? So they really bought into this experience for folks. So something familiar, something that they could connect to. And so in the first season, they had their different categories. Like, so these are the episodes for the season: data retention. What do we do around young users for protective measures? How do we store only what is needed from a data standpoint? So they have all this training around that. And then season two, they rolled out the security of that data, governance of AI tools. So you can see they took a very specific approach to, let's roll it out this way. Instead of everything's available, let's push it all out. They made it more of an experience and roll it out in a couple of different seasons. And then within those, they delivered in more adaptive and gamified formats, right? So not just here it is, take it, close it, submit it. It's more about how do we interact? How do we get people engaged in it? So they had diverse narrative styles, right? They had a Wild West movie trailer, daytime soaps. Again, Netflix buying into this idea that you have access to all of these TVs or TV shows and movies, but they're actually focused on this training. And so you could look at, they came in different formats, different ways, delivered badges for people for getting things correct and progressing. And then they needed to do it with a global rollout. So it had to be available to everyone everywhere. So desktop, laptop, tablet, right? So that it could be taken on different devices, including by the same person. They could move from device to device in a seamless way. So it kind of met their needs. It wasn't, all this or nothing. So that's how they built it and rolled it out. And for them, they had positive results. They measured the knowledge gain of the session. And what they found is that 97.3 by their measurement of the people that they surveyed reported that they had in a measurable way, had learned what they needed to know compared to what they had prior to the training. So that's a great level of knowledge gain. Again, they also improved the understanding of the privacy based on the assessments that they ran. And the program got good satisfaction numbers, 4.6 out of 5. So for compliance, pretty good. When you talk about something that, like I said, has been called a necessary evil for a really long time, people typically hate compliance training. 4.6 out of 5 is pretty outstanding. And they had their strategic business outcomes, the things they were focused on. They wanted a cultural shift in the way that the employees look at compliance. And so they don't see it as a checkbox task anymore. They see it as more of an active part of their culture, right? So the kind of culture that that organization has, this fits right into there. It doesn't feel like some separate stagnant experience. It's part of the overall culture at that organization. And they do, as they look at the things that they track from a compliance standpoint, the organization found they were able to reduce their exposure to regulatory fines and reputational damages based on the training that they delivered. So overall, big win. And again, that's why they won an award from us. Moving on to the next one, FanDuel. If folks remember that, that's like a online sports betting platform. And because they deal in wagering and betting and a lot of money issues, they very much need to engage in anti-money laundering training. Again, often prescribed by government agencies, but the training is built and delivered by them themselves along with their partner, in this case, Labyrinth Training. So they were able to build this training series that was very character driven, so that people would remember it. It didn't just come at them as static PDFs that they had to read and remember. So with their partner, they built these engaging exercises that used relatable settings, right? So stuff that people could say, yeah, that sounds like a day in my life. Like I recognize those people, I recognize that place, I recognize that situation. It isn't some abstract concept. Trying to model it on the real life retail sports books locations and how things go in that location so it felt more relatable to people. And they also created this persistent universe. It wasn't just like, oh, here's this fun little thing, do this and it's done. They, again, similar to the last one, there was theming. They kept these characters alive through all of the different programs. So people sort of connected to these characters before they even realized that they were. They started to see them over and over again, got to know them, and they became characters in this overall universe. And of course, it isn't done on a whim. Everything's backed by subject matter experts, right? They're weaving the core compliance material in there. That's primarily the goal, obviously, but they make sure that they do that and they work hand in hand, the designers with the subject matter experts, to make sure that there's, engagement and, dare I say, entertainment, but not at the expense of the compliance issues and the regulatory issues. And so, you can see, like, then there's just a picture of what that looked like. And that's the way they built these characters. And what they found is that, their saying is story beats obligation, right? So it isn't take this because you have to, because I said so. It's bringing in a strong narrative that people I can identify with is what brings them back, keeps them in, and keeps them connected. And that persistent affinity, right? That shared cast, come back and be somewhere that's familiar and recognized, and maybe somehow you've developed an interest in what these people are doing or saying. And then making sure that the design standards from a gaming perspective are good, right? It isn't just we threw together something that looks clunky, has fun colors, though. It had to look and behave at a professional level as well. And so you can see the quote on there is, the director of financial crimes compliance, the person who's responsible for all of this. They said they get the feedback about the substance and the questions are like, who are these characters based on? Right. So he takes that as, oh, they're asking him first, they're asking they're giving good feedback about the actual content, but then they're actually asking about the characters. Like, who is this based on? So you know that they're paying attention. So it's a good sort of secondhand feedback about how this stuff is working. And again, getting into the outcomes of that particular program. I know completion rates, I said at the top, weren't, I didn't say they weren't important. They're not everything, but they are important that people finish. And then because if you get completion, then you can start to look at the other stuff. And what they found is that they were able to get it across huge groups of people. The success and the feedback they had gotten was so good that they started to develop more and more in characters and situations, almost like the Marvel Comics universe from the movies, where you have all these various different movies, but they're all interrelated. So they did that with their anti-money laundering, anti-bribery, and corruption and privacy trainings are all part of this character-driven universe. So again, really getting people involved, and they have found that it's shifted that perception of this kind of training from dread to people actually talking about it, right? They're organically discussing what happens to these characters to each other and talking about the issues that these characters are dealing with in this training. So having a really solid impact there at FanDuel as well. One more I want to give you. I have two more to go. This one is for Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina, and they worked with their partner at Tara, and they're doing their annual required training. Sound familiar to anybody, right? That's a pretty generic name for a program, but I think we all have them. Companies need to do this, but they decided we need to take a fresh approach so we can get some real results beyond people just finishing the required training. So like I said, back in 2023, they realized that the stuff that they were delivering, how they're doing it, and they were attempting to be more gamified. They were trying to sort of next gen their programs, but it was getting to be a bit complex, and it was causing excessive seat time, right? People was taking too long for people to get through it, so they decided they needed to change things. So they kind of stripped it down, focused much more on micro learning modules, which, up until recently, the idea of micro learning and compliance were completely separate. Companies would say, well, you can't do microlearning for compliance. People need to take this class and they need to sit in the seat for a total of 12 hours until they're in compliance. What we're talking about today is you can actually break this stuff down because really all you're after are the outcomes. So really necessarily doesn't matter how you're delivering it. What you're trying to do is make it engaging, interesting, and effective. So they moved to a more micro learning approach, and their outcome was really just build an engaging interface, but still within strict regulatory compliance for about 5,000 different people in their audience. And so one of the things they looked at was this test me pathway. And I think this is a big key to this. And in this world, and I'm not going to go down an AI rabbit hole with you all today. There's plenty of time for that other days. But I feel like this is a really great opportunity for the use of AI. The idea of this pre-assessment, right? Diagnosing people, getting a sense of where are they currently? What do they have? What do they know? Where have they been? What have they done? So that we're not constantly shoving redundant, needless compliance information at them. But in the past, we've just not done that because this feeling has been because it's compliance, we have to cover all our bases. So just push everything to everybody and make sure they take it. Companies are realizing if you can like test people out of having to sit through the rest of the compliance training, they're immediately more engaged because, okay, this you're telling me stuff I don't know already. So it's very helpful, and you're not wasting their time, right? And then so they doing this at this Blue Cross Blue Shield group. When they did this, they found that the redundancy of the training was like slashed a bunch. They saved a ton of seat time. We'll see some outcomes here in a second. And then they reviewed the whole content pathway, right? And so they had a full module. It was 45 minutes, and it's a linear journey, but you don't have to take it that way. There's interactive segments with the high quality visuals. You got the scenarios, and it's interactive, and you can come in and out where you need to, and do it more at your own pace, obviously within the limitations that are set, but do it in a way that makes sense for you. So they made it much more personalized and relevant for folks who are taking this training. So some of the things that they did with this method, they jumped on the AI and privacy compliance issues, right? Which we're all having to deal with now. What's our company's approach? And it's all new. So there's a lot of training going on about that. So they made sure that they kept the training very specific, very relevant to what's going on from AI based on the company's AI policy. And then they let the employees sort of go through pretend risk scenarios, like using something like a chat GPT and seeing what would happen, and also for sales campaigns. So, they gave them an opportunity to see what it looks like and how the AI works and what could go wrong, instead of just, giving them a list of all of the things that they need to know. They also did it for all of their different critical security and fraud topics like phishing. So that's the email stuff that we all have to take. And they again, it isn't just telling them about it. They gave them hands-on, like, can you tell which one of these is phishing? Why not? And all of these other specific to their industry, right? The things around drug fraud issues, around how do we stop from destroying data that we shouldn't be destroying. So a lot of intricate, complex regulatory issues in a healthcare provider like that, but they're able to deliver that kind of training in different and unique ways. Last one I'll touch on is this company Nordea and their partner InfoPro Learning, and this is again it's InfoSec training, right? Very much similar to the stuff we just talked about, the anti-phishing and those kinds of things. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, not before we get to the Nordea one. These are the outcomes from this last one, which obviously is important to us. The outcomes. They report that they saved over $300,000 just in designing and streamlining their efforts. The seat time being reduced saved another $240,000. The development of getting to focus on just more specific targeted content, they saved almost $70,000 there. They saw an improvement year over year of all of their net promoter scores for this particular type of training, which is huge. And then another great outcome, especially from a compliance and an InfoSec standpoint, IT tickets cut by over half, over 50%, 56%. So really important, really huge outcomes from that organization. As I mentioned, this Nordea program for their InfoSec foundation, and they also used storytelling to make sure that everyone understood the accessibility and compliance issues. I'll go this one kind of quick. Again, we'll send this out to everybody, but I just want to be not mindful of time. Oh, and so and Shelley, you're asking, can I share what questions we use for NPS? I don't have those specific questions. That's the organization's questions. They didn't share that with us. They just let us know what their NPS score changes were. So I don't know specifically what they're using, but that's a good question. Sorry, I don't have the answer for you off my hand here. This program, they made sure that it was designed to be highly modular. Again, let people take it when and where they can. come in, come out, very flexible. They had to make sure that it was localized in the different Nordic languages, right, for all the areas that they serve, 4 different languages. And that's, a critical piece of relevance is making sure that the training is in the right languages. These are the way that they looked at it from an engage standpoint, a build standpoint, and a reinforce standpoint. I think the reinforce is really important. Testing real world decision loops, right? So giving them real scenarios around the incidents that they're talking about and what can happen if things go right, things go wrong, and then delivering hints along the way to help people figure out if their behavioral logic is right or wrong. So very important elements in this type of a program. Again, I mentioned it was storytelling. So they used an AI assisted character storytelling. They used AI to help with their partner team to build these characters using AI to build out the stories, right? So in previous years, branching storytelling, very difficult. You have to build in everything all at once. AI has brought us to a place where we can make branching much more seamless, an almost infinite number of ways. They also made sure that the user interface was very intuitive and could detect incidents so that people could get the information they need when there's one of those incidents. And of course, real world case assessments. So they're showing them examples of what has really actually happened in the world, and that modular structure is really important. When and where and how it works for me. And so their measurable outcomes reduce the security breaches compared to what they were having prior to the training. They've the reports back that the threat detection has been elevated. They're less likely to see things slip through. And of course, they have met their strict regulatory compliance for the European Banking Authority this whole time, which ultimately is the goal, right? But if we just focus on that, if we just say, take this training so we can be in compliance, and there's just a huge gap between what you're telling your learner and that ultimate compliance goal. All of these other things need to happen in between to get you there and to make sure that you aren't just in compliance, but that those things are actually happening on a day in and day out basis. So those are the examples I wanted to share. Last thing I want to wrap up with is some takeaways from our look at reimagining compliance training, some of the things you should be thinking about, just some high level strategies, making sure there's more context around the compliance training. I've said it over and over just in this short session, but it can't just be take the training or else. Way, way less stick, a lot more carrot for folks. You have to understand, why is this important to you? Here's why this is important to the business. Whether it's health and safety, whether it's fines and litigation, whatever it happens to be, explain why these things are important. Give them examples. Use a much wider variety of tools. We can't just kill people with click-through PowerPoints and compliance anymore. It just won't work. So lean on the sciences for learning, right? Like we do with other training, it's still applicable here. Recognizing achievements, right? It isn't just, oh, you did it, you're done, and now you won't get a mean letter from the CEO. Actually reward people, even recognize people for doing it, getting it done. And then using a variety of outcomes to measure, right? Completion cannot be the only measure of compliance training. We have to use a variety of measures. So with that, the last thing I want to share with you, as far as measurement goes, is this piece from our research, which I found very interesting. We asked companies, A, is your compliance training effective in meeting your organization's needs, right? Very simple question. Is what you're doing effective in meeting your needs from a compliance training standpoint? So in the green, those are companies that said, yes, our compliance training is effective. In the blue are companies that say, well, not so much. It's not great. So when we look at how those companies are measuring the effectiveness of their compliance, right? The overall measurements they have, you'll find at the top, these are those less strategic types of measurements. Hey, we met our regulatory requirements. Important, not necessarily strategic, very similar in how many companies use that. The fact that we provide a safe work environment because we're in compliance. You start to see a little more there from the people who say it's more effective as using that as a measurement, not a bunch. And then, of course, avoiding and mitigating risk. Not a lot of differentiation there either. But then as you get into more strategic types of measurements, right? Things like business performance, corporate citizenship, employee development, becoming a learning-focused organization. Companies that say that their compliance training are far more likely to use measurements like that when they're looking at their compliance training. So they're already in a strategic mindset. They're already thinking it isn't enough that people have finished it. It isn't enough that we can turn around and tell this board, this agency that we are in compliance. It's really important to us to see that as people complete these courses and these trainings and they interact with it, business performance is improving, that employees are being developed and growing in their roles or growing onto new roles. We are seen as an employer of choice in the environment because we are a learning focused organization or we're a good citizen, and there are just more opportunities for advancement. So I just think that's something to take away from all of this. I want to see if there's, I know we're at the half hour, these are short, but I'm going to stick on. If there's any questions or any thoughts or anything that anybody wants to share, I'd be more than happy to hear from you and we can talk. So I'll keep it open for a minute or two. But really, thank you so much. And just as I said, it really is possible to do this for almost all compliance training. You can really start to think about it the way that you think about all the other types of training you do. It's really about what are the outcomes. So appreciate that all. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the sentiment. And yeah, I'll just hang on for a second, see if there's any other questions. All right. Well, I mean, I think we did it, and we'll let everyone go and look forward to speaking to you, and you'll get all this information coming to you within the next day or two. So thank you, everybody.